Hello, 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 and welcome. Hello, and welcome to the International Mastermind Show. This is Galen Bingham, the leadership strategist, and we're going to go through this Think and Grow Rich process again. This is something that we do every week, every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. And I'm so excited to be with you again as we talk about imagination. And this is a masterclass. So we are just going to have the co-host here, and I'm going to bring the co-host in so that we can get this conversation started. We are just speechless around here. So I am going to bring in the high performance coach. This is the guy who is doing a lot of the double duty. This is the mastermind, Dr. Peter A. James. Welcome to the conversation, my man, as we jump into imagination. How are you doing?
Good morning, Galen Bingham. We are using our imagination this morning as we tread through Zoom and YouTube and Facebook and all these other platforms that we're operating with. We are imagining that this is going to be successful this morning. So those of you who are watching, imagine with us. Imagine with us and actually give us your feedback a little bit on what you and how it's going, and even questions around imagination. My name is Dr. Peter A. James. I am the high performance coach, helping you to shift your mindset. And I want to help to shift your mindset around chapter 5 of Napoleon Hill's infamous book, Think and Grow Rich, which the title is just that: Imagination, the Workshop of the Mind. But Galen, we are not alone. We never are. We rarely are.
Well, let's bring in the master wealth builder, none other than Miss Ann McNeil. How are you doing this morning? I always love seeing your red glasses. Boy, those red glasses just jump out. Not only are you repping one of the greatest sororities ever created, but your presence is marked by those red glasses. How are you doing?
Awesome, awesome, awesome. But then I'm also always awesome, because my imagination says that my mind does not know the difference between what's true or false. It only knows what I tell it. And I tell it every single day that I'm awesome, awesome Ann. And so when you talk about the imagination, that is a powerful imagination at work, because even when things don't appear that they're awesome, or that I'm awesome, I convince myself that it is awesome. And we talk about the imagination being, the influence and the emotions and the thoughts of the mind. And so as we embark upon this principle today, I am so excited. I brought my tattered book this time today, so that as we start talking about this principle and all of my notes, I'm so excited. So can we just get this party started so we can help everybody understand how to use your own imagination? Because it's like a muscle, and the more you use it, the more powerful it becomes. But the opposite is true. The less you use it, it atrophies. So if you want to, let's talk about these 13 principles, and then let's come back because we are in for a ride today. Gayla has something to show and share, just like in school.
I was just going to say, it feels like the third grade all over again. It feels like the third grade all over again.
Listen, this is exciting. And for all of you that's listening, please go and comment and like and share, but also subscribe to this channel. But make sure you let us know if you have any questions or comments. We would love to engage with you and find out how do you use your imagination. But before we do that, let's hear these 13 principles and how they connect.
Number 1 is desire. Napoleon Hill said that everything starts with a burning desire, a compelling reason for doing what it is we do. Step 2 is faith, having belief in our ability to attain that which we desire. Step 3 is what we call autosuggestion. Autosuggestion simply means being very intentional about the things that we are pouring into our thoughts, into our brains, and into our consciousness. Our brains, our minds will receive everything automatically, but we have to work extra hard to make sure that the positive things are what we are feeding ourselves, because those positive thoughts are going to turn into positive actions. Step number 4 is specialized knowledge. No one person knows everything, even about whatever their particular area of expertise might be. And the value of the mastermind principle is using the specialized knowledge of other people. Step number 5 is imagination, the workshop of the mind. Everything starts with our imagination and our thoughts, the burning desire to transform those thoughts into our reality. In order to do that, we have to take a look at step 6, which is organized planning. That is how we crystallize our desire into action, organizing ourselves. Having the thought and not acting on the thought isn't going to get us anywhere. We have the thought, we go through the organized planning to transform that thought into action. Step number 7 is decision. What Napoleon Hill said is the mastery of procrastination. Napoleon Hill said that the antidote to procrastination is simply to make a decision and then move on that decision. Step 8 is persistence. We have to have a sustained effort which is induced by our faith in order to achieve our goals. One of Napoleon Hill's books I love, even the title, 3 Feet from Gold. Those people who became rich during the gold rush in the wild, wild west days didn't do that because they were necessarily smarter or had better information than anyone else. It's because they stayed just a little bit longer. Sometimes people left when they were just literally 3 feet from gold. So hanging in there, being persistent, is step number 8. Step number 9, the power of the mastermind, the driving force. None of us can accomplish anything on our own. Everybody, I don't care who you are, from the most prominent person to the person who might be considered the lowest on the totem pole, everybody has someone who helped them get to where they are. And the power of the mastermind is being able to use those influences around us, use the thoughts, use the knowledge, use the exploration of other people to help us in achieving our goal. Step number 10, the mystery of sex transmutation. This title can be a little confusing, but essentially what the mystery of sex transmutation means is that we oftentimes in our society think of sex as being purely physical. It is absolutely physical, but what Napoleon Hill teaches us is that sex also has an emotional element, and that sex is the strongest of our desires. That if we can take our sexual energy, transform that into positive, creative influences, it can propel us to new heights. And so we spend quite a bit of time talking about the mystery of step 10, which is sex transmutation. Step number 11 is the subconscious mind, which Napoleon Hill tells us is the connecting leap between our human mind and the infinite intelligence, the source of all thought, the source of all creativity. Conscious mind, we spent some time talking about how we use that through the influence of autosuggestion and what we're feeding into our mind. Step number 12, which is the brain, the broadcasting and receiving station of thought. Final step number 13, the sixth sense, the door to the temple of wisdom. This is the final step through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. The principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles.
All right, all right. And I never grow tired of hearing those 13 principles, and it always strikes me as interesting when you consider how they build together and how they stack on top of one another. This really is a formula for manifesting and achieving success, however you want to achieve it. We often talk about money because money is something that's tangible. It's something that you can track. You know when you have it, know when you don't. But one of my favorite quotes from Ms. Ann is that it's about the money, but it's not about the money, right? This process is about how do you make a reality, how do you bring into reality that thing which you have in your mind. The text even says everything that's ever been created has been created twice. First, it's been created in someone's mind before it is ever created in reality. So that's what this process is about. And I got to bring you back in. I see that big old smile. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts here?
Oh my goodness. Listen, when I start thinking about my imagination and how it works, I go back to what Napoleon Hill shares and the fact that we hear from the principle that our imagination is actually the workshop of the mind. And this is where all our plans are formed. And as a contractor and a builder, I am very mindful of, the workshop, the tools. But what greater tool do we have at our, disposal, if you will, other than the power of our imagination? And when you think about the stories that are told in this principle, one about how the pharmacist bought this formula, which was really nothing but an idea. And the other story about how, this pastor had this idea. And I challenge each of us to think about what is it that you have in your mind, this emotion that comes and creates an idea that you will or will not act upon. And thinking about how the author shares with us, there's actually two forms of imagination. When you think about how does your imagination work, one is creative, and I like to, say that it comes from the inspiration from above. The other, though, is the synthetic imagination, which is bringing two or more ideas together and forming a third. All of that, Galen, is from this idea of our imagination. But I'd like to go back to something we talked about before the podcast started, and that was how do we each take an idea, walk it through. And I like to encourage everybody as you think through and walk through this process with us. Time is not a factor. So let's make sure we understand that when you go into the workshop with an idea, creative or imagine or synthetic, you don't come out like this with the manifestation of that idea. And sometimes it can take a lifetime for that idea to manifest. And as I was preparing today, Galen and Peter, for this podcast, I started thinking about all the stillborn ideas that I have had that I did not act upon, but I quickly moved those away. And then I began to think about all of the ideas that I wrote down and wrote down and wrote down 5, 10 a day, 7 days a week, year after year. And now I am becoming with the life skills and the personal development, that person that I need to be in order to manifest those ideas. This is deep. So if we can go around, Galen and Peter, and begin to share with the audience at least one idea, if you will, that you've manifested. So Galen, you know I'm going to call on you first, even though you're hosting this podcast. I'm calling on you first to share what we discussed prior to the podcast starting, and tell us if this is a creative idea and from your imagination, or if it's synthetic.
Yeah. So, the thing that we talked about was how, again, the mind is constantly working, and I pulled two points specifically from the text on page 95. He says, "Ideas are the beginning point of all fortunes. Ideas are products of the imagination." And if you turn to page 99, it says, "The only limitation is that which one sets up in one's own mind." And when I first joined the show, the cast of the show, was my first opportunity to go to the annual meeting. And the challenge that you put before us is to put our life in writing, to put our plans in writing, to create a vision page, to be audacious and ambitious. And I'll just share my screen and just share with you what my annual report looked like for 2019. So this is my annual report for 2019. But the key thing here is the vision page that you encouraged us to create. And at this point, I wanted to be on stage with Les Brown and a number of other speakers who I just really, really admired. Didn't have a plan for how I could make that happen, but I knew that that's something that I wanted. I wanted to create a company around Kill Global. There was some imagery that had been in my mind since business school, and that was the vision that I had for a business. I wanted to send my daughter to one of the best universities in the country, and at that time, her plan was to go to UPenn, one of the best universities in the country. And I wanted a charcoal gray Porsche with red interior. That was a part of my affirmation that I would say on a daily basis. And then there were certain certifications that I wanted to have. I wanted to have a certification with Daniel Goleman, Emotional Intelligence. I wanted to achieve PCC level coaching certification, which is professional coaching. And again, did not have a vision for how to make that a reality. But I knew that was something that was important to me. And one of the things that I just realized is that many of these have come to fruition. My company, Kill Global Coaching and Consulting, that is an actual company. It's in place. We are generating revenue. We actually just hit 6 figures for the first time a year and a half ago. Last year was able to be on a show where I was co-hosting with Mr. Les Brown. That is a reality now. I achieved PCC certification about a year ago. And part of my certification is this Daniel Goleman Emotional Intelligence certification that was achieved about a year and a half ago. And then last week, I picked up a charcoal gray, not Porsche, but a charcoal gray Acura Sports advanced package car with red interior. And I was able to enjoy this with my daughter. So it just dawned on me that all of these things were part of my 2019 annual report, but more importantly, they were all part of my vision page. So this works. The subconscious mind is always working to bring to reality those things that you continuously hold in your mind. And again, I'll just say, as I've said many times before, I don't know how this works. I just know that it seems to work, and it seems to work for the big things, and it seems to work for the small things. And oh, by the way, my daughter is at Spelman College, which is the #1 HBCU in the country. Is the 11th liberal arts college for women. It's exclusively for women in the country, and it is ranked 44th in the country of all universities. So this vision for her attending one of the best schools in universities in the country is absolutely reality. So now she is finishing her second year as a biochemistry major at Spelman College. So again, I don't know how this works. I just know that if you follow the process and your mindset's in the right place, this seems to work every time for big things as well as for small things.
All right. Next.
How do I follow that up? Oh my goodness. I want to start off by mentioning there and something that's a little bit deeper as we analyze Think and Grow Rich. The title again turns a lot of people off, right? Because it's Think and Grow Rich. And that rich part of it just allows people to say, oh, I'm not about wealth, I'm not about making money. Well, in fact, they are, but that's another whole story. We're not going there right now. I'm staying with the rich because you can measure money, right? You can measure money, how much it is. It's tangible to a certain extent. But then if you look at these 13 principles, to include this one here that we are analyzing, imagination, they are not measurable. You think desire, faith, autosuggestion, specialized knowledge, imagination, all the things that Napoleon Hill is mentioning that are going to support this Think and Grow Rich focus, objective, goal, philosophy are not measurable. However, how do you turn them into metrics or measurables? So Galen provided a great example of that. How do you make your plans? How do you turn your imagination? How do you even turn your autosuggestion or your decision into more tangible activities? Writing them down is one great way to be able to do. Capturing them on a vision board or an annual statement is another way to be able to do that. But most of us, saying this generalizing now, most of us, when we have a goal or plan, or I just want to get rich, we don't write down the plan. The Bible even says write the plan down and make it plain, right? We don't do that. We don't capture it. We don't imagine it in its physical form on paper. And those of you who are watching, I challenge you, tremendous challenge now. What does it look like for you to write this down? So very similar to Galen, I have my annual report with all the different areas that I envision on accomplishing year after year, 5 years, 10-year plan. And then I review them ever so often. I have annual plans, I have quarterly plans, I have weekly goals and things. And then if I want to go more detailed, if I have to do a presentation or I have to coach, I am drafting out an outline. And I am building on that outline as I have to do a facilitation or a presentation. I'm thinking about one that I have to do this coming week. What does that look like for you as you have your 6-month, 1 year, 5-year plan in your head? How are you bringing it out of your head and putting it on paper so that it can become a reality? And what are your thoughts about that? I know you have a lot of stuff on paper.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Yes, I do. And I was thinking, as Galen was sharing, we talked before the podcast started, and I was sharing with him how, as I started reading back through the principle for today's podcast, one of the things that popped out of me was becoming a student of the mind. Becoming a student of the mind. And I would like to encourage and challenge all of us as we think about how do you become, those of you that's listening and watching, how do you become a student of the mind with this imagination principle? So to go to your question to me, as I began to reflect back to my imagination and reading this and having a desire, influenced inspiration, if you will, hunches, ideas. And one of the personal family ideas that I had going back to 1980, 81, 82, 83 is that as my mom aged, I wanted to be in a position to be a caretaker for her, because I watched those around me, older relatives, pass and not have family be in a financial position to properly caretake. And the entire life changed for that family because of finances. And little did I know that 20 years in the future, as my mom's health began to deteriorate, that I told Galen this story, which is the true story, that I moved into a house, $1 million house, on a golf course, actually on 2 golf courses, in a cul-de-sac, Olympic-sized pool, basketball court, all of that. Homeless. Yes, penniless. Not just penniless, but deeply in debt. This is the imagination at work. But I was in this principle every single day. And our mastermind group was meeting every single weekend. And I asked a friend of mine was going to drop some documents off. And he said, would you like to ride with me? I said, sure. And he drove through this beautiful neighborhood where Don Shula lived, and these, Miami Dolphins lived. And I was like, oh, now my imagination is working now, right? I'm in the principle, and I'm imagining living in one of these homes. And I don't know if you ever listened to Earl Nightingale tells this story about being picked up by a taxi, and he was going to his destination, and he was admiring the homes. And the taxi driver said, oh yeah, those are thieves. And those people can't afford those homes, and they're just, they make money illegally and all of that. And sure enough, that thought came to my mind, that these people, what in the world were they doing for a living to be able to afford to live like that? But because of this principle, imagination, again, my imagination kicked back in, and I began to say, but how can I just started dreaming and imagining, how could I live in one of these homes? And sure enough, we were going through the cul-de-sac, and there was a little card in the front of this yard stuck down really deep in the grass. It said, for sale by owner. And I told my friend, say, pull in there and let me write this number down. He was laughing because he knew I was broke. He said, what are you going to do that for? You don't have any money. I said, yeah, but pull in there. And I wrote the number down. And the next day I called the number and I said, I wanted to see the house. And of course, the owner came out, female. It's about not quite 9 months pregnant, but she was at least 8 months pregnant. And she came and she walked me through the home. It was beautiful, 6-bedroom, 7,000 square feet, beautiful, beautiful. And actually what I didn't realize until right this moment is that that's the exact same picture that I had on the refrigerator of the home I was living in with a friend. Yes, that's another story for another day. But long story very short, less than about 6 months later, I moved into that home and did not have a dime, not a penny to my name. That's another story for another podcast. Another story for another podcast, Galen. Talked about that a little earlier. But the point is the imagination at work. And so moving into that home years later, while in that home, my mom passed, took her last breath in that home. And so I'm sharing that these principles work. It's a function of time. Please don't think you're going to have an idea today. It's going to happen tomorrow. It does not happen. Like sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it does. I'd like to, Galen, I know you're hosting, but I would like to have Dr. James share, yes, an imagination example. While I go into the photos on my phone, I'd like to share a story that happened. I think both of you heard me share this in Black NSA, something that happened to me on last Saturday after we finished the podcast about imagination, but I have to find it in my phone first. So I'm going to go off camera, find it in my phone so I can share it. So why are you laughing?
because you're asking me to share something so you can go dig in your phone.
That's the imagination at work. It's an impulse of thought. That's what the author tells us. We have these thoughts, but they're an impulse. Yeah. How often do we have an impulse and we don't act on the impulse. I just happened to say what I was thinking.
Yeah.
And this is the imagination at work, because I think it's so powerful for us to share with the audience. How does this principle really work? Because one of the things that popped out at me in rereading this principle is, and I actually highlighted in my book, and as I know it's tattered, I know it's torn, and I know I got stuff all over the place. But if you take your book, yes, I got stuff all over the place, right? Notes. But if you take your book, what I did was, and I don't know if you could see this, but I highlighted on every page the word ideas. And there's an average of almost 10 words, ideas, IDEAS per page. What is that telling us about the power of the imagination and the connection to your ideas? Are you acting on the idea? I want everybody to take a moment, look around you, just take a moment. And we want to thank all of you who are listening live on YouTube. If I start calling names, I'm going to miss somebody. So please charge it to my head and not my heart. But thank you. We see you. And if you have a question or comment, please place it in the chat. And remember to comment, like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. But what are you doing with the ideas? I wrote a book called My Daily Date with Myself, and it's a journal. And I asked my brain to give me 10 ideas every day. No, I don't get 10 every day. Sometimes I get 5, sometimes I get 10, sometimes I get 15. But the idea of writing down ideas is how you exercise your imagination. And that's what Galen just shared with us just now, how he used this platform, how he used and tapped into this process of the International Mastermind Association, this Think and Grow Rich book and these principles, but he actually followed the instructions, and he decided in each of the areas of his life, what is an idea that I want to visualize in the form of a picture? And then he had to become, and he's still becoming that person to attain that which he desires. It's the power of the imagination, and it's so powerful. I think oftentimes we miss it. It's like a muscle. You must put action to the idea. And that's my big aha from this principle today.
Yeah. While you're looking for the pictures, I want to go back to, again, something on page 99, because I think this links back to Peter, something that you were talking about, where it says the only limitation is that which one sets up in one's own mind.
Mhm.
And so my question to everyone is, do you have the courage to dream daringly enough? I'm gonna ask that one more time. Do you have the courage to dream daringly enough? A lot of times we say we want things, but we don't want to articulate that thing that we want for fear that it might not happen. And so that's why it takes courage. And if you dream it, you got to have the courage to articulate it. And then you got to take the next step, and that is to create an image of it, because the brain does not process words. One of the first things the brain does when you have an idea is it creates an image. And the image is what it processes. So by creating an image, by finding an image of that thing, you're actually helping your subconscious understand what it is that you're trying to create. So, Peter, what's your thought? I know in the work that we do, very often a big part of it is helping our clients articulate
Yep.
and clarify what they want, but then giving them the courage to dream bigger, to dream more concretely, and actually put steps into place for making their dreams a reality. I'm going to say the first step is to write it down. Back to what you said earlier,
Yeah.
write it down and make it plain, and then take even the next step of creating a picture of it.
And I love that. I love that, Galen, overall, the whole perspective of writing it down and then making it somewhat of a vision. So let's back up a little bit and go a little bit deeper for folks. I have an app that I use on a regular basis. That actually, somebody asked me this last night, asked me how I got into coaching and what spurred me into coaching overall. And so I have an app called Evernote. And in Evernote, I have notes, ideas imaginative ideas from years ago, literally over 10, 12 years ago. I have notes, maybe even longer, that I've captured, that I ensure that I write down. When I have an idea and I don't know where to put it, I got the phone close by, I'm gonna put it into this app. And I have ideas galore. Many, as Anne even mentioned, they're stillborn, for sure. But here's why I've had those notes. As I reflect on my life and my career, I've had moments, critical moments, when I've had to make a shift, or I mean, at least make a decision. And here's an example. Years ago, and I may have mentioned this before, so forgive me if I have. I had a boss where I had just finished my master's degree, and I said, "Hey, boss, I just finished my MBA. How is this going to help me move up in the organization?" And the boss looked me in my face and said, "It won't." And that was, in that moment, I was furious. I even took it home that night and I was furious just because he had the audacity to say, "Hey, all this work that I had put in to get this degree, it's not going to help me." So I'm ultimately, after a few days of mulling that over there, Galen, I made up in my mind that, you know what, I can show him better than I could tell him. I'm going to start writing down some plans, and I'm going to make sure to show him how I'm going to get this return on investments. I had another time when the president of North American Sales got up there after 2008 in the housing bubble, the financial crisis, and said, "No more layoffs," after 2 layoffs already. And 6 months later, there was another layoff. I realized that I can't put my faith in this organization. So even shortly after that, I began crafting my plan. Actually, even before that, after the first layoff, I began crafting my escape, for lack of a better word, right? I say all this to say, first of all, we all have pivotal moments in our lives that allow us to evolve and get to where we are, number one. But number two, when that pivotal moment happens, or even when it doesn't happen, how and where are you capturing your notes? And that's what this chapter is all about. How and where are you capturing your imagination and implementing it? And yes, to Galen's point, that next level is making it visual. So there's levels to this thing. But what does it look like for you? Have you even gotten on to level 0.5, not even level 1, level 0.5? Where are you capturing it? How are you capturing it? And then how are you implementing it? And when you're ready to get to that next phase, come talk to us, because we'll help you create some visuals around it as well.
Yeah. Before we bring Ann in, I just want to say one thing to Peter about what you were saying about taking notes. One of the things I've learned too, and this is what works for me, is it's when I was in school, I would take notes about what the person said, right? Or I'd take notes about the idea that I had about what the person said. Today, I find it more helpful to write down, what do I plan to do because of what the person said?
Love it.
Because 6 months from now, yeah, I'll read what Ann McNeil said, and it's going to be amazing, but I'm going to lose that connection to what I was planning to do because of what I heard Ann McNeil say. So make sure that you're capturing notes in an action-oriented way, because that's what's going to spur that next set of idea or spur action.
That action and that behavior that's tied to that idea, that's tied to the imagination. Yeah, that's phenomenal there, Galen, for sure. Ann McNeil.
Yes. Yes, 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 yes. This is a picture. You can see this, right?
Yeah.
All right. Last Saturday, when we finished this podcast, I went to a friend's funeral. And after the funeral, I went to the grave site. I waited until everybody was seated, and I got out of my car and I started walking toward the gravesite. And as I got closer, I just stopped and stood far off. And just waited till they were finishing, and something said, look down. Now, how does this relate to imagination? When COVID started, I started reading and sharing some words from Oswald Chambers, from My Utmost for His Highest. Now, I did that and still do it 7 days a week, 7 days a week. And just recently, as I started writing more, and I'm going to the imagination, inspiration, and how we have an impulse of thought. And I had this thought, never wrote it down, but I had this thought about this man that writes these phenomenal words that I share every day. Fleeting thought, never thought about it anymore. I am at the gravesite on Saturday after this podcast. Something says, look down. At my feet were these words. Oswald Chambers' headstone. What is the likelihood that I would be standing at the gravesite of a man whose words that I write and share with the world for inspiration every single day? What's the likelihood of that? And I'm just saying that oftentimes we don't think about the power of our imagination in these thoughts and these, just fleeting thoughts. Now, think back to the trillions, not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars that are generated from advertisers who use subliminal seduction to influence our thoughts and our thinking with hunches that we should buy this thing, that we should take this trip. And sure enough, it plants a seed in our mind and we act on it over time, not realizing how and why. This is the power of each of our imagination. I just would like to encourage each of us, guard your mind, it says in the other book, with all diligence, because out of it becomes your life. Every thought, every action, every deed, good or bad. And this is such a powerful principle and such a powerful thought. I think oftentimes, Galen and Peter, we really don't give much thought to this creative imagination and how it really works automatically. And oftentimes when you become a student of the mind, that's what we're doing every single Saturday here. From principle to principle to principle to principle. We're becoming a student of our own mind, and then we're willing to be vulnerable here for the world to see, what does it look like when you apply your imagination? I wrote this book, and it's just a journal. It's called A Daily Date with Myself. And it's just a daily journal. I talk about it all the time because I think that it is so empowering. And Peter talked about using Evernotes. But for those of you that's listening, why don't you put in the chat, whether you're listening on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're listening, put in the chat, how do you capture your ideas, your imagination? How do you capture it? You know, the great leaders, Napoleon Hill tells us, all of the musicians, the writers, everybody that they used their creative imagination and they became a student of their own mind. They began to master that craft. They began to assimilate what they learned, and then they began to make use of it. Napoleon Hill shares a quote that I love. He said, greatness is the ability, first of all, to recognize the power of your own mind, then embrace it, and then you must use it. And I keep saying that, use it, because it is the action that we each must take with a definite plan of action, if you will, on that which you desire. And so the transformation that takes place, especially if you're talking about the desire for money, who's holding you accountable? So with that thought in mind, Peter, Galen, if we can go to, maybe Galen would be best, if we can go to, the power of the annual meeting. The power of the annual meeting. And I cannot think of a better example than the one you gave us earlier, Galen, on how that annual meeting, what if you were not required to bring your life in writing. Can you just imagine? Can you just imagine where you would not be?
Yeah, I mean, the annual meeting, absolutely powerful. It's a powerful process, and I love when Ann says that this is not a conference. This is a meeting. There's no guest speaker. You are the guest speaker of your own life, and you are required to bring your annual report where you where you document all the things that you've accomplished over the previous year and all the things that you plan to do for the upcoming year. And the thing that I really love about this process is that it really causes you and requires you to pause and reflect. What have I accomplished and what am I trying to do? And then go through the steps, as we said earlier, the first step of writing that goal down. And then even take the next step of creating an image that will allow your subconscious to understand what it is that you're saying that you want. Now, to directly answer your question, and I think that it's possible that I would have accomplished those things without attending the annual meeting. I think that it's absolutely possible. I think I would have had the ability to accomplish those things, but I don't know that I would have accomplished them on purpose. So this is about, how do you achieve success on purpose? Any of us can achieve success accidentally. You know, if I'm driving down the road and run out of gas and pull into a gas station and say, hey, not only do I want gas, but give me one of those lottery tickets, I scratch it off. I can achieve success accidentally. But this process is about achieving success on purpose by following these principles that have been proven since 1937. So I can't say enough. And you've got everyone from every walk of life, from every age, from every industry. They're supporting you, challenging you, holding you accountable for those things that you say are important to you.
Yeah, so let's have everybody go to internationalmasterminders.com and you can register. And actually, we had many of you that have already registered. So on a weekly basis, we're going to start sharing with the audience, those of you that have registered, giving you a shout out. So please remember to comment, like, and share this podcast. But I do want to share some comments that are coming in on YouTube, and all of you that's joined: Johnny Lloyd, Colette, Doretha, Natasha Jones, Diane King Flowers. Johnny Lloyd said the word rich can be a trigger for previous limited mindset. Wow. Natasha said, becoming a student of the mind. Thank you. Wyman Wimbush said, become a student of the mind. Stop observing the way great minds work and begin studying the way great minds work. Wow. That's deep, Wyman. Amirzir Page, what is BNSA? BNSA, thank you for the question, is we are part of the International Mastermind Association. That's what this podcast is. And as a part of the International Mastermind Association, Ann McNeil, I coach, if you will, a $1 million mastermind session, 10 weeks, as a part of the National Speakers Association. Inside the National Speakers Association is what we call the Black National Speakers. And you can go to, as a matter of fact, we can put this in the chat on. So Black National Speakers Association is what BNSA stands for. So thank you for that question. Is it the Black National Speakers Association? Yes, it is. Doretha said, thanks, Ann. I needed to be reminded that our ideas take on a journey. It may take years. We must work on it daily. And I have to commend you, Doretha, from knowing you. You are working on your ideas, and you're manifesting from the husband to the home to the family, all of that. So congratulations. Wyman answered the question. Yes. Wyman also says the only limitations we have are the ones we accept. Everything else that presents itself as a limitation are simply obstacles of the mind and will conquer and overcome. Amen, Wyman. Thank you, everybody. Wyman, Wyman says, an atomic habit to embrace, commit to taking actionable notes, not simply recording what was said. Thank you, Galen, and what was seen, but include how you will apply it and how it will be leveraged to achieve your vision. Johnny Lloyd said journal. Yes, Johnny. And that's why I wrote the book, because I found over years my journaling started taking on a life of its own. And my journal ideas started to be categorized between my lessons learned, I would write those, my gratitude, 2 or 3 things a day. What am I thankful for, which was a different list? What are the desires of my heart that have been fulfilled? Because I had to say thank you, God, for those, like payroll every week, sometimes 6-figure payroll, powerful, hit it. Thank you, Johnny, for that. Johnny Lloyd also says, also do wins, journal, and write it every day at the end of the day. Now, Johnny, I thank you for that, because I do mine at the beginning of the day, and I forecast what I would like to happen during the day. So thank you for that at the end of the day. Whatever is your preference as you listen to us, whether it's the beginning or the end, or sometimes both. Amazir says, I like the fact that this is a family affair. Yes, please join us. Please join us in January. A family affair. Look at all of those children. Yes. Johnny Lloyd says she attended the first time last year, and the principles were unfolding based on her report. She's saying, do not miss this. And Diane says, awesome podcast. So happy to join. Yes, please, everybody, comment, like, and share. Comment, like, and share. And please make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel so that you can watch us practice on Saturday mornings before we get ready for the podcast for all of you. Yes, live. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. We want to make sure we let you know we love all of you for chiming in and joining us, because we come here, yes, 52 weeks just for you. We bring you phenomenal guests, but we're also students of the mind. And we also are here with a masterclass talking about these principles, but not just talking about them, sharing how they're impacting our lives, the good, the bad, yes, and the ugly. It is not all that wonderful, because it's life. And it's what life makes of us as we learn how to use our imagination also to overcome challenges and problems. And so we're going to go ahead and prepare to wrap up, because the time is well invested. So Galen, you are hosting today. So
Yeah. So, again, I want to really drive home a couple of things that we've been talking about. Not only we've been talking about imagination, but we've been talking about activating your imagination. And so I want to share something also from the text, but I think this is from the specialized knowledge principle. It says, knowledge will not attract money or anything else unless it is organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action to a definite end of accumulation of money or whatever that thing is. Lack of understanding of this fact has been the source of confusion to many of people who falsely believe that knowledge is power. It is nothing of a sort. Knowledge is only potential power. It becomes power only when and if it is organized into definite plans of action and directed to a definite end. So having ideas, attending these meetings, attending these this podcast recording, reading the book, that is a great first step. But what are you going to do with this information? What are you going to do with this knowledge? And that is the real trick. There's nothing mystical or magical about just reading these words. You have to do what these principles say. And that's been my biggest takeaway from this conversation. And Dr. Peter, what's your key takeaway, and how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, wow, just such a lot of stuff. Actually, Galen, you started this off very, very nicely when you were speaking about your vision, when you showed us your vision board. So thank you for that, because I think that helped me get on get on the train for sure with you and even dissect it a little bit deeper, even if it's not to that depth for people who are watching that vision board. Where could it start for you? And yes, we should all be like Galen and have those visuals, but if you're not there yet, where does it need to start? We talked about notes, how you're capturing the notes, how you're building out your imagination. And for me, that's really what reinforcement. And even I'll finish it off by saying something that you restating something you mentioned already about actions. How are your notes action and behavior oriented? If they're not, they're just stillborn. And I don't know about you, stillborn ideas, imagination kind of just don't go anywhere, and they just remain on the page. How do you bring them to life? My name is Dr. Peter A. James, the High Performance Coach, helping you to shift your mindset. You can find me on any social media platform at Dr. Peter A. James. That's at DrPeterAJames or at shiftyourmindset.com. And McNeil, this has been pretty deep today.
Wow, it keeps birthing babies.
Ah,
I was coaching a client this week, and I was sharing that your business, just like your idea, is like a baby. How many of us have had business ideas that died stillborn, that you never nurtured? This conversation is so deep that we're going to continue it next week. But there was another question in the chat talking about ideas and business. And the question was if the annual meeting can be a tax write-off. This is personal development and professional development at its best. And if you have a business and you in your business, in your budget, place money aside to go to a conference for personal and professional development, you write that off as a business expense like anything else. This too, if you have a business, check with your CPA, because I'm not one, even though I have an undergraduate degree in accounting, but I will encourage you, find a way to find your way there. Find a way to find your way there. And people used to tell me, oh, I can't afford it. But you know what? You really can't afford not to. And if you have children, bring your children. Because now we've been doing this so long that the children that started out with us in 79, 80, 90s, early 2000s, they now have children who they are bringing. And so one of those individuals are on this YouTube right now. You know who you are. I'm not going to call your name, and I so very much love you. And I'm glad you showed up today, because one of your children now, grandchildren, are also impacted by these principles, because we encourage the children to read Think and Grow Rich also. Therefore, every Saturday, and you can go to Think and Grow Rich Youth on Eventbrite, or you can go to our website at International Masterminders. Every Sunday, the youth have their own mastermind meeting for 30 minutes from 3:30 Eastern to about 4 o'clock. And they are reading a page or two a week, and they're discussing their affirmation. Yes, I'm shocked also to learn that many of our children don't know the Our Father's prayer. Yes, don't know the Our Father's prayer, and teenagers. So our work is again, it's an idea, it's an inspiration, but we're acting on it. And if we can just impact in a positive way with these principles, one child, just one child, even a year, we've done God's work, I think. My name is Ann McNeil. I am the Master Wealth Builder, helping to build stronger and better lives and businesses. And I help entrepreneurial women get greater clarity in their highest income producing areas of their business and their life. But we also cover the brothers. But you can contact me at Ann McNeil, that's McNeill.com /coaching. And I would encourage you, join me at least once a month on the first Tuesday as a part of our Clarity Mastermind, where we help you get greater clarity about your dreams and goals. Galen.
Hey, yeah, let me tap on before we totally close out. Let me tap on something that you just said. This is a creative imagination download here. It's not a coincidence that this annual meeting happens in Boca Raton, Florida every year. Florida in particular, the state of Florida is demonstrating to you, it's telling you very, very plainly that you are responsible for educating your kids, that you have to take responsibility. It's no longer even participating in the perception that it's going to educate your kids. So if this is something that you're going to have responsibility for, I can think of no better foundation than teaching your kids how to think and create success and successful plans and strategies on purpose based on principles that have been around for literally 100 years, right? This is not something that Galen just came up with. This isn't something that Ann McNeil concocted in a dream. These are principles that have been around since 1937 and been accumulated and leveraged by some of the greatest thinkers and high achievers in the world. So again, it came to me that this meeting is happening in Florida, and Florida is telling you that it is getting out of the education business altogether. My name is Galen Bingham. I am the leadership strategist, and there are just so many ways to get a hold of me on LinkedIn, YouTube, my website. But the most fun way to get a hold of me is by checking out my podcast, Whiskey, Jazz, and Leadership. We're on every podcast platform. We're streaming in 20 different countries. We talk to leaders all over the world in every different industry. We talk about the whiskeys they drink, the music they listen to, and what they believe it really takes to be an effective leader. I double dog dare you to try us at least once. I guarantee you that you're going to pick up something that's going to impact your life and your business. I help African-American senior C-suite executives bake permanent success into their working life. And I want to leave you with these words from the author. I'm going to read this specifically from the book. He says, riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to a definite demand being put upon the application of definite principles and not by chance or luck. Success requires no apologies. Failure permits no alibis. This only works if you work it. And we hope that you come here with us every week at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time every Saturday as we encourage you to think and go rich. Until next time, take care.